Unit 2 Review, Question 33. Represent the application problem in symbolic form and then find the result. So Antonita camped at negative 18 meters relative to sea level. She then hiked 24 meters upwards. And our question is, what is her current altitude relative to sea level? So here I drew a picture of this scenario. Okay, so 0 would be sea level, and her camp was negative 18 relative to sea level. So this is her initial starting point. She then hiked 24 meters upwards. Notice that since 24 is bigger than 18, it passes over 0. And this is her new altitude. Okay. So first, symbolically, we would write the starting initial point. The change is adding 24, and this would be our symbolic form. Okay. To add these numbers, since they have different signs, okay, we'd find the difference. 24 minus 18, which is 6, and 24 is larger, so this new altitude is positive 6. So our answer is a complete sentence referring back to the goal. Her current altitude is 6, or we could say positive 6 meters relative to sea level. Okay. And just 6 works as well, but I just wanted to highlight that it's now positive when it was negative. Let's look at the next one. On a cold day in Alaska, the temperature dropped 14 degrees overnight. If the temperature was negative 6 degrees Celsius before the drop, here comes the question, what was the temperature after the drop? Okay. So here's a diagram, and notice they originally tell us about the change, and then they mention the starting point. So here's the starting temperature of negative 6 degrees. Okay. And then the drop was this amount, 14 degrees overnight. So from the negative 6, we want to subtract 14. So that's our symbolic form. Starting temperature minus the change of 14. Okay. And that will give us our new temperature. And let's just label this. Notice if you go 6 down and then 14 more down, that's negative 20. Okay. Or you could rewrite this as addition. You're combining negative 6 with negative 14 gives you negative 20. Now let's answer the question, what was the temperature after the drop? The temperature after the drop was negative 20 degrees, and it was measured in Celsius. Let's look at the next one. Trey spent $60 on new clothes for school. Tara spent 8 times as much as Trey. Now here's the question. Determine the change in Tara's account after buying new clothes. And I want to highlight the change in Tara's account. So we're not finding how much Tara spent. We're going to need to find that along the way, but we want the change in her account. So here we have the diagram. Okay, Trey spent 60 and Tara spent 8 times as much. So you could think of each one of these is 60. And if we have 8 copies of 60, we could say that Tara spent 8 copies of $60 or $480. Okay. But if we want to determine the change in Tara's account, okay, notice the 8 isn't negative. What's negative here is each of the 8 60s. The 60s are negative because they're being taken away from her account. So the change in her account is 8 times negative 60. So that's our symbolic form, 8 times negative 60. And that results says that the change in her account is negative $480. So now let's answer the question. The change in Tara's account after buying clothes is negative $480. Let's look at the next one. The temperature in Scottsdale changed by negative 24 degrees in 8 days. If the temperature changed by the same amount each day, we want to know what was the change in temperature per day. So here's a diagram. Okay. We could say the starting change was 0. So when they started measuring this, there was no change. Okay. And then the total change is this negative 24. So this distance is our change in temperature. And they said that this happens in 8 days. Okay. So since it changed by the same amount per day, we want to split the negative 24 into 8 equal pieces. Okay. And you may see that this is division. So here I split 0 to 8 into 8 equal pieces, so each one of these is 1 day. And I did the same thing here in the change in temperatures. But notice it's not going to be 1 here. Since we're sharing this negative 24 amongst 8 days, that means in 1 day it went down 3, and then it went down 3 per day. Let's just check that this checks out, negative 21, and the next is negative 24. So in symbolic form, we're sharing or dividing negative 24 equally among the 8 days. Okay? And our result is negative 3 degrees per day. So let's write that as a complete sentence. The change in temperature was negative 3 degrees per day.